SharePoint makes it really easy to modify workflows because it's not unusual to need to modify one. For example, the needs of the business might change, and that would generate a request for a change. But it's also true that the imagination of what's possible in workflows grows the longer folks are using SharePoint workflows that you create. So throughout this course, we've been opening up workflows, making some modifications, and resaving and republishing them. And remember that each time we do that, every time we publish a new workflow, which is when we reassociate it with the list or library that it was created for, each time we do that, a new version of that workflow is created. Any instances of the workflow that were previously created with items in the list or library continue with the version that they were already using. And any new items that are created, any new instances of the workflow, are created using the newly published, newly modified workflow. So all of that works fine. I do, however, need to show you that there's a possibility that you can make a modification that's a little problematic and what you might want to know about that. If you use some specific actions, for example, log to history list, or the task actions assign a to-do item, collect data from user, these actions have something in common. They write to other lists that are kept on the site. And so, when we go back and take a look at the settings for this workflow, you'll find a task list and a history list that we created very early on. Once we're actually creating tasks or writing to the history list, it's problematic for us simply to go in and to change this to a different task list or a different history list. If we need to do that, and there may be compelling reasons to do so, then we need to be able to go back in and modify the association of these lists to the workflow. So if you need to do it, fine, but don't change the task list or workflow history list casually. And if you need to change either of these lists, let me show you where you'll find some additional information on how you'll need to reassociate these with your workflow. So I've gone to the Microsoft site just because I know that the document I'm looking for is here, and I'm going to use the search and search for modify a workflow association. You'll notice that the very first article here is on modifying workflow associations, as is the second. It's the same article. And just click and you will actually find all the information you need to be able to reassociate task list and history list back to the workflow. Just scroll down and you'll find lots of information about how to do that. So don't change these casually. These are really the only two things that you can modify in a workflow that are going to create significant problems for you. Other than that, modify away. If you have a question about your modification, don't be afraid to save it, do some additional research, and make sure you've got all of your modifications made before you publish and generate that new version associated with the list or library.